So I'd like to bring up now Melissa Higbee, who is going to talk to us about the social benefits of conservation.
All right, so I get to talk about CTA, which is so easy to explain to everybody, right? Right? It's not an easy thing. So when you think about conservation technical assistance, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So maybe it means the timekeeping code, contribution and cooperative agreements between NRCS and the districts and the state associations for staff and local initiatives. It might mean office space, vehicles, computers, and equipment, and training, which is so very important to all of us. The conservation tools that we use in our office, and conservation planning. But the most important thing about it is that from the producer's point of view, what does conservation technical assistance mean to them? And I think it means it's a trusted face that comes out to their farm, that's not driven by a profit, but there to help them become better stewards of their natural resources. Recently, my district conservationist Tina and I had an opportunity to go out in the field together. We very seldom ever get to go out in the field together. But one of my staff was sick, on sick leave, and so I got to be the one to go. So we started off on the 30-minute drive out to the landowners, and my DC took the opportunity to fill me in on the aerial, the soil map. We went over what was in the notes. We read why they had wanted or reached out to us in the first place, and they had read about conservation planning in our newsletter. And so as we drove to the location, we took that time to maybe think about some improvements that they could possibly do, just looking at the aerial, some possible areas of protection. So when we got there, we were greeted by the landowners who right away asked, how does this work? That's the most thing, right? They always say, how does this work? So we started walking around the property, and we looked left to the farm fields, we looked right to the river in the floodplains, and around to the woodlot, and then to the open field. We asked the landowners, what's your objectives? Do you have some concerns? Could we provide some guidance? And like most times out in the field, they said they really didn't know what their objectives were, and they really didn't know what we were there to look at, but they wanted to do conservation planning. They had heard that there was a push for pollinator habitat, and maybe we want to do that. So as we walked around the property, we pointed out opportunities where they could do some pollinator habitat. We discussed their forest land and what a forest management plan was. We pointed out where they needed some buffers and where they should be placed, and we talked about the invasive species that we saw and how really important it was that they managed them. We weren't there with a bias. We weren't there with a profit in mind. We were there to help them to develop a conservation plan that would weave right conservation practices, not just one practice, but weave a bunch to make good accomplishment and greater outcomes. So after spending several hours looking over the property, looking at all these flowers, or looking at the river and walking all the way down to the river, they were ready to begin to put a plan together. And we knew the practices that they chose to implement on the agricultural landscape, such as the pollinator habitat, would provide nectar and pollen sources, of course, to the pollinators, but it would provide wildlife food and cover and protect the soil and water quality. So the planning for the forest that they wanted to include would also provide wildlife habitat. It would improve water quality and soil stability, and would have an economic and recreation purpose too. So CTA supports conservation planning like that. The benefits of conservation planning are so many. We know the benefits. You guys all know the benefits, and I'm just going to repeat them so we can remember what the benefits are. Reduction of soil loss, improved water quality, air quality, quality efficient wildlife habitat. It's all long-term sustainability of our lands. So last week I was attending our NCDEA week-long meeting we're in North Dakota. Great place to go. And on one of our days in our meetings, our executive director, Rich Dusterhouse, who I adore, who doesn't, right? And he said something that really stuck with me, and I wrote it down. I go, say that again, say that again. And so I wrote it down, and he said, conservation planning benefits society. Which we know that, but we don't know that, right? We just are in our jobs. We don't really think about that conservation planning benefits society. So this really needs to be heard by our legislators, our general public, our neighbors, and our communities. Sustainable land, productive farms, forests, produce strong industries that support local food supply, marketing, transportation, farm equipment. It contributes to our state economy. with the installation of conservation practices. There's local purchases of equipment, there's local purchases of concrete, all sorts of construction, and there's hiring of contractors. So, and property values increase with those improvements. Communities are motivated by that positive environmental benefit, and we'll see a resurrection of community pride and foster revitalization in distressed areas, which we see in Michigan, in Detroit, and Flint with the local food movement. It's awesome. And tourism, outdoor recreation opportunities are fueled by good water quality, clean air, and productive wildlife habitat. So it really takes a community to be of cooperation and good conservation planning to improve water quality, and it takes education, dedication, commitment to reduce the impacts of the bad habits. And it does not happen overnight at all. We all know that, how long it takes. So in 1999, a little boy in a small rural community went into a stream to play, and he cut his leg, and it became infected, and he almost lost his life. And of course, it was in the news, it was on the news, it was on the papers. It launched a series of investigations from our Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. And they came out and did a lot of investigating, and they determined that there was high levels of E. coli in the stream. So, of course, that was all in the news also too. And so the incident led to the public becoming aware of the pollution issue and public outcry that something had to be done, and there was mistrust and blaming, and you know who got blamed. So through testing though, over the years, it took quite a while, they did some testing, and it was proven that it was bovine and human. So guess what? It was everybody's problem, right? Couldn't just blame the farmer. So our board and our staff and NRCS staff, we looked at this situation playing out in our community, and we knew that we could play a really important role in that, and that we could help with that solution. My district board are all farmers, so they demonstrated in the community sound science-based conservation practices, and so then they shared their stories. They went to the coffee shops, they did field days. I asked them to speak and talk about what they did, because farmers listen to farmers, right? The district employees provided one-on-one confidential assistance with the homeowners to address their an uncomfortable topic, their septic system, because most people don't want to have a failing septic system, right? Or illicit connections. Some people don't even know that they have just a pipe that goes out to the ditch and that they don't even have a drain field. But it takes a lot of money to replace that septic system. So we had to really, it was educational, non-regulatory. NRCS district staff worked with the farmers in the surrounding areas and to adapt some conservation practices and plan. We did conservation planning, so nutrient management plan, no-till, cover crops, waste storage, just to name a few. And then we had a USGS stream gauge to record the progress. And it seems like just yesterday, but it's been a long time and a lot of progress. But change is not easy. It's not easy for change, and it takes a long time. Personal contact with trusted technical staff with the best interest of that landowner in mind is how trust is gained and changes are made. The landowners felt a comfortable level of, because it was voluntary, number one, it was non-threatening conservation planning process, and in the end they wanted to make the changes, they just needed to know how and what to do. It was a win-win for us. The health hazard, the bacteria in the water was addressed on a local level, awareness of the landowner of this issue. They saw other conservation opportunities they could do, adoption of a lot of practices that protect water quality, and it spurred our local economy. In some cases, conservation may be a new concept. They need a helpful hand, like my first story about the landowners. They really didn't know what they wanted to do, they just had read something in a newsletter. And they might need some help with some objectives and maybe the needs that they, what is their need. But in most cases, landowners are aware of conservation practices like cover crops. Say they just heard that they want to put some cover crops in. But they're not always understand the whole complexity of all the practices and how they can integrate that into their operation. In each scenario, what we work with is unique, and CTA allows us to provide site-specific plans tailored with the customer's desires and their needs. Often these long-term plans and the practices they're adopted create a wave of awareness among friends, family and neighbors, and it grows the economic and environmental impact with each step that's taken. And so CTA to me would not be possible or this would not be possible without CTA because of the services that are provided by trusted, talented local staff, and that's Conservation Technical Assistance.